I hate Manchester, is what I would say if you met me 1 year ago. I moved to the UK as an immigrant in 2015, and for 9 years I've grown up and lived as a Londoner. That means we don't make eye contact, we don't complain about how everything is expensive because it's London, and more importantly, we take our frequent and efficient public transport for granted. So as soon as I moved here, I was generally terrified about how I would cope with Manchester's public transport. I thought I was entering a city where buses only run once a week, and every journey requires some ancient ritual, praying that the next bus appears while you read the timetable like it's Minecraft enchantment table language. But after a year of coping in this ecosystem, I'm putting my grudges aside and giving Manchester a proper transport review, covering it from trams to buses and the whole urban system. The stereotype is that anywhere outside London has horrible public transport, especially buses. And honestly, that's not totally incorrect. There's one big exception to this statement. Metrolink. Metrolink is Manchester's tram system and is the largest light rail system in the UK. Before moving here, I had a bit of experience with London trams in Croydon, but Metrolink was a full culture shock. I did not expect a network outside London to be this accessible and reliable. Unlike most tram networks, Metrolink is just built different. Manchester's key strategy on building the tram network was converting disused train lines into new tram sections of a whole line, which as a result creates these 8 lines, 99 stations, and scenic views like Sale Water Park, the Catsfield Viaduct, and the Salford Quay section of the Eccles line. Where else could I be in the shot? Trams on each line run every 12 minutes, or even less, to 6 minutes during peak times, which, given Manchester's size, are very reasonable frequencies. When Metrolink works, you don't have much to complain about, but I do have some issues when it doesn't work. On-street trams work beautifully when designed properly. Manchester City Centre? It's not that. It's one giant choke point. The stretch between Deansgate, Castlefoot, and St. Peter's Square feels like the awkward middle child of the system. Especially when you're coming from Altrincham, you'd be cruising at these nice, fast speeds, and then suddenly the tram crawls into the city center like it's tiptoeing through a minefield. It becomes a 5-mile-an-hour anxiety shuttle, like it just lost its self-esteem halfway through the journey. Then you get to this part that leads you to St. Peter's Square tram stop. On paper, sure, this works efficiently, but in practice, not always. I've been held up by traffic, protests, and once by a small gay parade. I love my gay rights, truly, but I don't want electron dysfunction as the price. Traffic circulation doesn't help either. Trams often don't get priority at junctions, Shoot Hill being a prime offender. Honestly, I don't think cars need to be in the city center. I might make exceptions when it comes to cargo loading and emergency services, but you built a tram network with park and rides. Use it for goodness sake! Tram. And then we get to event days. After a music or sports event, Metrolink just implodes. Sure, sometimes they fix the platforms or tweak the routing, but they almost never boost frequency or add special services. So you will expect the most packed tram with the overwhelming smell of beer taking you home. But credit where due. Metrolink's strengths are genuinely impressive. Converting disused lines was a W move. It's not the most conventional thing a tram system does, but is what's made it the largest light rail system in the UK. And I honestly don't understand how people coped before Exchange Square opened 10 years ago. This stop, with its second city crossing, is a lifesaver. Market Street is absolutely a mess already, so I can't imagine what it would be like before Exchange Square opened. In fact, I consider Market Street to be dangerous. It's overcrowded and the spaces are left exposed, given why there are so many safety signs here. So, overall, Metrolink is annoyingly good. When it's running properly, it's safe, accessible, affordable, reliable, and sustainable. Basically the 5 promises the B network keeps shouting about. Sure, it has flaws, but every tram system does. It delivers these promises 90% of the time, and it's trams. It's literally the best mode of transport to implement within a city, considering all factors. Which is why Metrolink is easily the best part of Manchester's transport. But the buses, well... Before I moved anywhere, I barely touched the bus outside of London. But when I did, it felt like a survival challenge. You stand at a random stop somewhere in the Midlands, and then you squint at a faded timetable printed in wingdings, and you pray to at least 4 gods that the next bus isn't in 76 minutes. And what do you do when you enter the bus? Speak to the driver just to get a ticket? No, let me tap my oyster and not make eye contact or any communication at all and do it the Londoner way. Now, when I moved, I was aware you were required to specify a ticket before you tap, which, I mean, come on, really? Thankfully, the buses now go with a more normal tap and go system, but passengers are still allowed to pay with cash, so the awkward, "Hi, can I get a paper single, please?" ritual hasn't died yet. Now, I got a hot take. I don't support a cashless society. But when it comes to transport, it just makes sense to enforce contactless payments and especially transport cards. Paying with cash is quite of a hassle and therefore time consuming, and any delay can cause a domino effect of delayed buses. I nearly got late to school once because someone wanted to buy and set up a B card on the bus. Brother, this is not a bank branch, it's a bus. Speaking of delays, the buses are never on time. Well, statistically speaking, I'm apparently wrong. It's about 74% on average. But keep in mind, that stat takes every journey into account. If we filter that down to peak hours, in my experience, that rate drops to single digits. I wouldn't call that reliable. And if no buses follow the scheduled timetable, the frequency also collapses. At times, you get 3 buses from the same route going to the same stop at the same time. And that also leads into large gaps in schedules too. Delays also kill capacity. With more time wasted, there's less time for buses to make more trips per hour. I do have a couple theories as to why delays are a problem beyond the ticketing chaos. Theory number 1. Buses do not have a middle exit. They only have the front door. So when you're in a crowded bus, you're gonna have some issues because there's a high chance that all of this space here is just full of crowded bunch of people. So when you're trying to leave the bus, you're gonna have to say "excuse me" all the way, and then until you can finally leave the bus over there. And that could have all been solved if you just had a middle exit to go through. It's gonna waste time, it's gonna waste space, and it's gonna make buses more delayed just for them to get you out. Theory number 2. The road infrastructure is not helping. Manchester has a larger share of cars, and way too many roads are built like 4-lane motorways right in the city center. More space for cars equals more car traffic, and that means less priority for buses. There is priority for delayed buses, but even that isn't enough since it doesn't fix the root cause of not having enough bus lanes. Bus lanes do exist in Manchester, but I would really love to see more of them on our roads. Without these two things, speeds become less predictable and therefore punctuality decreases. So stop saying "one more lane" and add bus in front of lane. Also, illegal parking happens a bit more often than it should. However, the B network buses have something that I really love, and that is buses on tracks. The busways are wonderful, and this is another purpose of replacing old rail alignments. The buses have no traffic, and the buses are able to go to their full speeds. It's also a cheaper version of a tram network. It combines off-road and on-road segments into a single route. The bus stops are more like tram stops, and if you're lucky, you get to ride on a more comfy bus. I mean, come on. Tables on a bus. Tables. Unfortunately, this is just a small portion of the bus network. So besides that, the buses are still pretty mediocre in terms of concept and design and how it's executed. It still has massive potholes to fix, but the buses would have been so much worse without the recent innovation of B network. If you are local to this day, or you know why I'm wearing a B costume in the first place, you are definitely aware of B network, which, if you haven't, it is a relatively new body of transport that is wannabe TfL. But jokes aside, this is genuinely the biggest transformation Manchester has ever experienced in their public transport industry since Metrolink was introduced. Buses here have been deregulated for decades. By putting all of these companies into one large family photo, it has made the whole bus system much better. These yellow buses have finally replaced these yucky buses and even some sort of announcement system. Wait, since when did Manchester have a bus stop called The Rock? Right next to Lord Street too? What the fuck? Cycling is one thing that Manchester kind of lacks, and that includes cycle routes. I mean, come on. Are you going to admit that you're not regulating these enough by the fact I nearly got ran over by a motorcycle whilst riding a bike? This is the spot where I crashed out. That one day where I got hit by a motorcycle and destroyed my bike. I mean, for now, they're improving the cycling experience with these hire schemes and also new cycling paths, which is a step in the right direction. But the biggest, juiciest ambition in the B network pipeline is the future stuff. Look here, commuter rail is joining the B network, and that's actually game-changing. It's been held hostage by these rail operators, but not for long, and they will bring contactless payments into the city as a result. The first city to do so outside London. These future plans get even more optimistic when they bring the idea of tram train services and even underground services. They aren't messing around. They clearly want to be seen as highly as London. That is if even these big plans happen in the first place. So, bonus points for optimism, but knowing the British infrastructure, we're not going to see underground trains within the next 2 decades. The full-scale B network hasn't fully hatched yet, but it's already been carrying Manchester on its tiny yellow shoulders. And since we are on a topic of rail, let's talk National Rail. National Rail in Manchester is served by 3 key stations: Manchester Piccadilly, Manchester Victoria, and Oxford Road. Manchester Piccadilly introduced me to Manchester when I came here. This station is the North's Crossroads, which has the highest potential in reaching you to furthest places with operators like Cross Country and Avanti. For a main station, it serves its purpose quite well, but the through platforms of 13 and 14 are always at max capacity, and it's stated for its demands. I mean, it's definitely better than Euston. Nothing can be worse than Euston. Manchester Victoria feels more Manchestery than Piccadilly, and I think it's even better connected than Piccadilly. It has direct access to the AO Arena, Metrolink is just around the corner, and the canopy of this station looks sick. It doesn't have many major issues. It's surprisingly clean, and in my experience, it serves the network best out of all the stations here. And plus, even has Transpennine Express and Oxford Road. I haven't used this station. The only cool thing is the very nice curved wooden roof, but I do know this station is heavily reliant on the Castlefield corridor, but it generally is on life support. This station could go with an upgrade. Heck, the bus stops here are better connected than the trains. And speaking of which, the Castlefield corridor. Many trains pass here, and it's quite relatively small for its size. It's cursed Oxford Road and also Deansgate Station as the sole way of getting around here. In fact, it's labelled as one of the top 3 bottlenecks in the UK rail network, full of congestion and needs major investment according to Network Rail. They've tried proposing solutions for use of tunnels, but we're probably not going to see this problem fixed until 2069. Manchester is served by a handful of operators, but I'm focusing on 2 of the most important rail operators symbolizing the region: Transpennine Express and Northern. It's no doubt that Northern gets a lot of slander, and that includes jokes about cancelled services. But even I can see that Northern is just trying its best. Sure, the trains are quite dated, but it's doing its best. Yeah, the infrastructure is not the best, but you know what's doing its best? That's right, Northern. It's not getting the superior funding like what's happening in the south, and therefore Northern operators don't get a lot of potential. If we get some pity comments, Northern might improve a bit more. The same situation also applies with Transpennine Express. I'd be honest once more, and I haven't been to one of their services until right now. I'm inside a crowded train and people are looking at me right now. What I do know is that it's been blowing up quite a bit. The trains are definitely nicer region standards, and there are massive ambitions to make it more reliable, which has already gone into effect. Hugely thanks to the Transpennine route upgrade. This future facelift is meant to fix the infrastructure between Manchester and York, which will finally improve a major railway section in the north and is said to massively contribute to the economy. And when will it be finished? Oh, right. Well, at least this will be done before what happens next to the Castlefield corridor and HS2. Oh yeah! This is the most political I'll ever be in this channel, but cancelling HS2 to Manchester was a grave mistake. They've already feared over the massive budget to the point where they pretty much ruined the whole point of major high-speed rail. I swear the whole point was to finally get the UK high-speed rail nationwide, finally closing the infrastructure gap between the north and the south. But no, now the whole south side gets all the benefits, and out of all cities, it's Birmingham. Manchester is the fastest growing city in the UK, and this is by far the most important city in the country that isn't London. So if you can't tell, it's a massive regret that this city doesn't have the infrastructure that it deserves. Even though they said they'd be improving Northern Rail infrastructure as compensation, bro, what? That should have been done in the first place, regardless whether HS2 gets cancelled or not. Duh! But what did the people think about Manchester's public transport? Well, the best group of people to ask would be B Network themselves. So I emailed them, and they have not responded to my email. So I decided to ask people in public. I ended up not doing it. I was too scared. There were a bunch of guys bawling at the basketball court over there. They seemed kind of approachable, but they just kept bawling. So I didn't want to interrupt. And I'm not asking anyone else. Duh! So what's my conclusion after all this praising and ranting? What point am I trying to make here? Well, I believe that Manchester should get some more recognition. This city takes pride in itself a lot, and honestly, a bit too much. Unlike many cities and transport networks around the country, the city is moving on from its past, and it clearly wants to be like the big leagues. I'm looking at you, London. And the formation of the B network clearly shows that. For many years, Manchester will see nothing more than a small city. However, in the present day, I believe that Mancunians can finally see their darkest potential. They finally taken public transport more seriously than ever before. If they can grow the public transport to a large reliable scale, the city can grow more opportunities and blossom to its peak, which can finally compete in the overly invested London. It's time for the North to get that slice of cake. Manchester, you are way far from the top of the league, and honestly, you'll never be in my lifetime. But with your ambitions, along with the improvements you made during the past decade, you've become one of the fastest growing transport networks in the whole country. But on the other hand, if we look at an international perspective, you seem to be an average transport network. Therefore, I believe that you will rest nicely in C tier. And you know what reminds me of C? That's right, B!